Hello and welcome to the Hill's 2024 GOP primary debate breakdown. I'm Mychael Schnell.
And I'm Rafael Bernal. Last night, 8 presidential hopefuls took the stage in Milwaukee to make the case that they should be the Republican presidential nominee.
Former President Donald Trump, who is leading in the polls, chose not to participate in the event. He instead sat down with Tucker Carlson for an interview that aired at the same time.
So we want to get right into what happened last night, and our colleague Julia Manchester is joining us now from Wisconsin. So Julia, you were in the spin room during and after the debate. So what was the mood like last night?
Yeah, look, I think the mood was certainly going into it of anticipation. We didn't really know what was going to happen because remember, guys, as all of this was happening, we had all of the drama unfolding in Fulton County, Georgia, as former President Trump prepares to turn himself in. And then you also had former President Trump at the same time sitting down with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson on his for another interview. So we had a number of different stories sort of happening at the same time, so we didn't know what to expect. Now, for The Hill, I primarily cover Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and to be honest, I was pretty surprised that he didn't make as big of a splash during last night's debate. We were really anticipating the other candidates to go after him, to target him, for him to try to have a number of breakout moments. But largely, he tried to stay out of the fray, had a few strong moments when he did speak, but largely he sort of faded into the background. And part of that may be because his campaign wants to play it safe. It's been a rocky road for them. But I was shocked to see that. But Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, as our colleague Niall Stanage wrote last night, I think there's a lot of mixed reactions to his performance. I was chatting with some sources who talked about how he really came off as annoying, sort of condescending, sort of that annoying kid in your AP history class, know-it-all kind of thing. But at the same time, he, ultimately was able to get a lot of screen time and very much faced off against former Vice President Mike Pence. And Mike Pence, I would say, also had a very good night. He's been trailing in the polls, hasn't gotten a ton of coverage for a former vice president, but he was able to really jump into the fray and stand out.
Look, Julia, you've been covering this race very closely, of course, especially, as you mentioned, DeSantis. Debates sometimes give some candidates a bump. Sometimes they don't really move the needle in an election. In your opinion, do you think that this debate will move the needle at all? Of course, DeSantis is leading the pack behind former President Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy is behind him. Mike Pence behind him there. Both had some interesting evenings while DeSantis didn't. Do you think that this will make a dent at all in the polls and shake up the race?
Yeah, I think it certainly has the potential to, and we've seen that in past election cycles. I don't know if this will necessarily be a deciding factor going down the line. There's obviously more debates to be had. There's more campaign events to be had. Lots can happen between now and January when the Iowa caucuses take place. But, I think we could definitely see a shift in the polls because remember, this is the first time a lot of Americans got really their first look at all of these candidates on stage. The three of us covered this stuff all day. We're very much in the weeds, but the average American isn't necessarily paying attention to what's happening every day in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina. So this was their first look at it. And looking at past debates, what you see is a lot of these candidates sometimes get sugar highs after a debate if they perform particularly well. We see them, see a little bump in the polls, maybe a bump in favorability. But that can all change depending on what happens with another candidate or what happens, on the campaign trail. So I think that it definitely has the potential to somewhat move the needle.
So there's two things that you're saying that I'm very interested in. There's that Trump taking the air out of the room. That obviously happened on stage as well as off stage. And then this sort of sugar high that candidates get after a really good or the low they get after a really bad performance. What did you feel in the spin room before the debate and after the debate? Did they talk more about Trump after or before, and who looked better after the debate?
So I think we were talking about Trump, before the debate and after the debate, and those in the spin room were doing the same as well. In fact, the Trump campaign argue, very cleverly and in a smart move, sent quite a few surrogates to the spin room and to Milwaukee this week. Jason Miller, Stephen Chung on his comms team, Congressman Matt Gaetz, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, to talk about Donald Trump and make sure that even though Donald Trump wasn't physically present there, he was there in a way. And you saw them giving their take on the spin room floor. I mean, I thought it was interesting that Congressman Matt Gaetz was praising Vivek Ramaswamy for his performance. It seems like it almost appears like there's a closeness between those two camps. Ramaswamy oftentimes jumping at any opportunity to praise the former president. At the same time, though, I thought what was interesting during the debate was that during the first half of the debate, we didn't hear Trump's name that much. It was very much focused on these candidates and their platforms and their policies, which I think was a very good move on, Bret Baier and Martha McCallum's part. I thought they did a fantastic job with the questioning, got really into the substance and did a good job at, keeping this as substantive as possible. Now, further on into the debate, obviously, as Bret Baier said, you have to address the literal elephant in the room, Donald Trump, or figurative elephant in the room, Donald Trump. And I thought it was so incredibly telling that I think 6 out of the 8 candidates on stage, I think Chris Christie sort of shook his fist, or did something with his hand, but they raised their hand when asked, would they support Donald Trump if he was the 2024 nominee, even if he was convicted of a crime? That just shows how big of a presence he has in this primary, whether or not he's on the debate stage and how tight of a grip he has on this party.
Julia, one candidate I want to ask you about who we haven't discussed yet is former UN ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. She was, of course, the only woman there on stage, and she's been polling behind, but she's the one who jumped into this race earliest of the candidates on stage very early this year. I found it pretty interesting that she was the first person to go after former President Trump, criticizing him for the dollar number that was added to that was added to the national debt, and that at one point she called, I believe, Donald Trump the most unfavorable politician in America. Tell me what you thought of Nikki Haley's debate performance. Particularly, it was that exchange with Vivek Ramaswamy that caught a lot of eyes on foreign policy. Obviously, something that she comes to the table with. And just, I want to touch on her because, of course, she was the only woman on stage, which I think is, an important aspect to touch upon. And I know that you've done a lot of reporting about female politicians.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think she had a very, very good night. She didn't necessarily jump into the fray the same way Vivek Ramaswamy or Mike Pence did, or maybe even Chris Christie. But she really was on brand because she's campaigned with this message of, I'm going to be the only woman in the room, the only adult in the room. I'm going to let these men be boys, essentially. And I thought that was very much on brand. Last night, she had a very strong quote at one point when, a number of the male candidates were bickering, and she said, invoked Margaret Thatcher and, women leadership. And I thought that was very, very strong on her part. And I thought her takedown, I would call it takedown in a way, of Vivek Ramaswamy was very, very, impactful. I don't think foreign policy is a major, issue that voters go to the polls and vote on. It's obviously an issue she's strong on, but Ramaswamy was very much trying to, take advantage of the screen time he was getting during the debate. He was being the loudest in the room, and I think her comment, in a way, sort of shut him down. And, I think just showed her strength as a debater. Her campaign has been interesting because she hasn't really seen a lot of traction in the polls like a Ramaswamy, or obviously a former President Trump. But, her allies tell me that she's taking a slow and steady approach, that a lot can happen between now and January. She's being consistent. She's going to Iowa, New Hampshire, obviously South Carolina, former governor of that state, and just meeting with voters in smaller groups and slowly building this coalition. I think her strategy of, in a way, going after former President Trump was very, clever as well, because she's making the electability argument. She's trying to look to a Republican audience and a Republican base and say, look, guys, I served in the Trump administration. I supported this guy, but we have to win in 2024. and she's arguing he's not an electable candidate. We'll see if that plays well with the base, the hardcore MAGA base. I would assume it doesn't. But I would imagine that a lot of independent voters, a lot of maybe some Republican voters who aren't sure about who to support, who are sick of Trump, they're going to like to hear that.
We have about 20 seconds. Let's get into everyone else. Did Tim Scott, was his performance as bad as a lot of reviews are coming in? And people like Asa Hutchinson, he reminded me of being a middle schooler watching Republican presidential debates in the early 90s. Did anybody stand out except for the candidates we've already talked about?
Yeah, I think Tim Scott in particular, I mean, look, I thought he did a fine job with his presentation, but you sort of forgot he was there sometimes. I mean, he had a few good moments, but he wasn't really stealing the show, and it was hard for a lot of these candidates to, speak over someone like a Vivek Ramaswamy or Mike Pence really dominated the stage. Doug Burgum obviously made it despite having an injury the night before. I thought Chris Christie had a good night. Really showed off his debate chops, and I thought he did very well. He faces an uphill climb though because he's so never Trump at this point.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for joining us from Wisconsin, and enjoy the cheese curds, I guess.
Thank you.